Hi everyone, welcome back to the Triumph Strength and Performance podcast. On today's episode, Devin, Chris, and Andy invite Alex Tran onto the podcast to talk about his upbringing as a coach, different powerlifting rabbit holes, some systems they've seen developed, and more. If you like this, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, and check out our content on Instagram at Triumph S&P. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Okay, Alex,
Yeah,
tell
that
us
was pretty
about
cool.
yourself.
Um, I'm Alex Tran, head coach, only coach of Alex Tran Powerlifting. I feel like been doing this for a little bit longer than I think most people think I have. I've been coaching for almost 4 years now,
Is it
which is
4 years?
yeah, which is pretty cool. But I feel like I didn't get any traction until like the last couple months. Um, I've kind of just been in my own little hermit, doing my own thing. Not really trying to branch out or meet anyone else or even like make an attempt at going to meets or meet people. And then all of a sudden, like something flipped halfway into last year where I'm like, I got to start talking to other people who do this so that I can actually make a living. And then I met you guys, and now we're here.
How did it start 4 years ago?
Uh, COVID, no friends, freshman year in college. There was nowhere to go. I pretty much like lost all social skills when we shut down. So I pretty much had the gym and that was pretty much it. So it was like there's nothing else to do but to really think about training. So I went into the deepest rabbit hole through like everyone we could think of, like Mark Ribbito with Chris Bromley or something. I don't know, it was Alexander Bromley or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Just like going down into like everyone we could think of, going on lifting vault, just like looking at all the different programs, like 4-5-3-1 5 day, 5-3-1 4 day, and just like looking at the differences between those two and like just running those programs. And then I was like, man, I can make something better. So wrote my own first program. I coached myself for like a year, and I felt like I was living the coaching like lifestyle, the self-education lifestyle with no clients. And I was posting like infographics on the internet with no clients. And I was just learning things for the sake of just trying to make my own training better. And I had nothing to say for it. I had nothing to show for it. I was just like, yeah, I just know all this stuff. I've only applied it to myself. So, but like, I feel like I'm pretty smart. And then someone asked me, hey, like, can you write me a program? And I was like, yep. And then someone else asked me and I said, yep. And then it just kept going. And then I was like, all right, might as well just try and do this. It's pretty cool. So
That's
I
the
think,
perfect start though, You're not like marketing or anything. People just reach out to you.
yeah, I coached for like, I had a roster of almost like 17 before I even really like said I coached. People just approached me and felt like there was a very natural progression, but it was also very small and like contained within my own little area where nobody knew I coached, but the people who did know that I coached. And it was just nice to kind of do that.
Was it mainly like students from your school?
It was people from my high school in my hometown. I actually don't coach that many people from my college. It was mostly just people that I would train with throughout high school, and it would start as like, hey, I want to increase my vertical jump. Can you write me a program for this?
Oh,
And
nice.
then I guess subtly I transitioned them into powerlifting.
Nice.
Just being like, hey, instead of cleans, let's try and do like squats. And then
But
I'd be like, instead of thinking of the objective goal of trying to increase their vertical jump, I'd be like, damn, your squat's going well. And they're like, oh yeah, my
just
squat's going
just
well.
gaslight them into becoming
Yeah, pretty
powerlifters.
much. And then they would just end up powerlifting, and then some of them would actually fall in love with it and actually do it, and I still coach them now. And some of them would be like, "Yeah, I just want to jump higher, man." And I'm like, "Sorry, I can't help you."
Nice.
Over the
Were you
course of
ever
those
into
four
the S and
years,
C stuff?
Yep.
Were you ever into like the general S and C stuff, the S and C coaching, or was it always strictly powerlifting?
It was pretty much strictly powerlifting. I think
Yeah.
I definitely dived into it, just because I thought it would apply to powerlifting, just thinking that everything would apply to powerlifting, like diving deep into bodybuilding, diving deep into physical therapy, diving deep into S&C, but I never had like any thoughts about going into S&C. I never had any thoughts about going into bodybuilding. I always thought that it was like powerlifting, this is cool. I'm gonna try and I feel like a lot of us do this when we first start out, like try and figure out like something that's completely not talked about and try and make that like the next meta of like, I brought this to the powerlifting game and I tried drawing from all these different places and none of them ended up working. And I was like, maybe I should just like focus on this powerlifting thing.
Yeah.
Get good at that instead of trying to come up with the next big thing.
Yeah. What were you saying, Andy?
I was gonna say, did your roster size, like, was it around that same amount for the whole 4 years, or did it like dip back down and then recently come back up? Because I know like now, like as we were talking about before this, like you're getting inquiries from people who are like invested powerlifters and things like that. So it's obviously picked up a good bit since then.
I think the roster size has stayed relatively the same, but the focus has changed completely differently, right? Where I think that starting out, maybe we'll say November of 22, I had like 18 clients and I'm pretty much around that same spot now, but the focus, the intention of like just powerlifting instead of people kind of being like, oh, like I'm gonna try this powerlifting thing. Now it's like everyone's kind of in a prep, everyone's been in a prep. I think that also just the investment in just myself and then also an investment in the team as a whole has like changed 180. Where I feel like I think about this a lot where I think my team is like we're like a beehive and everyone is kind of just doing the same thing and we're all kind of going to the same goal and no one now is kind of like, oh, I want to try something else or I want to do the XYZ or I don't want to train today because I'm tired. Like everyone is kind of just like about it, which is great. I think that the that's kind of like the best way we can go about it where instead of doing more work, I guess everyone is more just like kind of now about the same lifestyle. And
Do you think that you maybe shifted like your service in a way to be more strict to everyone to like facilitate that change, or do you think maybe it's just like a natural growth where you've been coaching powerlifting longer, you've gotten more increase from real people that are into powerlifting? Like, do you think it's more of like a thing that you did to change people's mindsets, or just a different population have been inquiring to work?
I think this is like the only time social media has ever really helped me with my coaching career, where even though I'm not actually like a powerlifting coach, where I'm still working with probably with people that we would consider Gen Pop now, or people who are considered like, I guess intramural powerlifters, right? But presenting myself in a way that made it seem like I was working with powerlifters specifically, and even like people would inquire to me and I'd say, hey, like I'm only working with powerlifters now, so like I'm sorry, but I wouldn't want to take you. And kind of just walking the walk and showing people, hey, like even though I have clients who aren't powerlifting, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I'm good at, this is what I think that you should come to me for. And then the dynamic of the roster just started changing and it just started being more powerlifter and now it's fully powerlifter. It's great.
Do you think client quality increased over time too?
Yeah, but also I think that as I take myself more seriously, other people start taking me more seriously. Like a big thing was like feedback. And before I think I even met you guys, I didn't really care if lifters gave me feedback or not. I could deal with just videos and people just send me videos and I try and give them as much feedback as possible. But I think you guys really opened my eyes as to like, oh, your clients actually need to do stuff for you. They can't just record things and send them to you. Um, and as I took myself more seriously and as I took myself as like, I'm coaching now, you gotta, do what I say, and I'm gonna put my foot down. And if you don't do that, you're out. People started kind of seeing that and people started taking me more seriously and people started realizing that we're not just getting coached by him, like we're really getting coached by him. And, we actually gotta invest ourselves into this guy.
I feel like we all started that way too. Like, I mean, at least myself, like 3 years ago when I was coaching, I don't know. I don't even know what my roster was like 3 years ago. Like, I think I just had 4 friends I was coaching for free at that point. But yeah, I wasn't like requiring feedback or anything. Like, didn't have like routine updates or I wasn't nagging people to fill in their sheet. It was literally just like, here's the program. I'll give you some tips every now and then. So I feel like that's also something that like you see the value in more as your roster size increases too, because then you start to feel like you're more disconnected the more people you coach. And I don't know, that's what I experienced at least. But like, yeah, 100% just like getting the feedback in, like you're saying, is definitely something you can realize when you see other coaches doing it.
We gain a lot of confidence, huh?
Oh
Like
yeah.
just the way that we talk to our clients now compared to how we did maybe like 2 years ago, where I would like tiptoe and be like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to like say something that's like they feel like I'm pushing them too hard. Where now I'm like, oh, you just got to be better, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool to see that. Where like I feel like a coach for like a sport now, where I could kind of feel like my lifters or like my players are like chitter chattering and be like, oh, Alex this, Alex that. Whereas before, I just felt like we were just a group of friends and you're kind of just powerlifting, and I was kind of just like the figurehead of it.
That's one of the best compliments to get from like clients is that like they essentially like look as at you as like that almost like figurehead or that authority figure, like you would like a coach for an actual sport.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten that from a couple people, and it's like, yeah,
Nice.
thank
I
you.
like something that I think you guys do really well is the community thing, where there's a whole like TSP kind of family. I think as of recently, you guys have branched out a lot more, and once you get into different states, different countries, that kind of gets a little bit more washed out. But especially like last year, where I'd probably say what like 85% of your client base was all in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Everyone was just kind of together. Everyone was friends. Everyone was tagging each other in stories, and everyone was kind of like going to raves and stuff together. And I thought that was so cool because it was like you have this group of friends, and then you guys are like all of their dads, and and everyone was just like, oh, who are you coached by? Oh, I'm coached by Andy. Oh, I'm coached by Chris. Like, oh, I'm coached by Devin. And it was kind of just like this massive TSP family, and I think it created a lot of cohesion in terms of what your clients were doing to each other, making like everyone was kind of like pushing each other to kind of be a little bit better. Your people were maybe like creating rivalries or whatever, and I think that was like really cool and something that I tried to do myself with like my group of little guys.
I think it was we kind of cheated at the start where it looked like this, one big thing because it's three
Yeah.
rosters just combined under one name. So I think it's a
Yeah.
little bit easier to create that like community aspect early on when you just have, triple the opportunity to build, that community, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it was probably like 15 people. Mostly three of you guys.
Yeah.
It's probably like 15, 20 people, but I thought it was huge. I was like, damn, they got so many people. I thought that was sick.
The illusion.
Yeah. So
We want to go on the first topic,
Yeah, sure.
the rabbit holes.
rabbit holes.
I know, Alex, you mentioned this a little bit when you were talking about, when you were first kind of looking for information, but were there any like big rabbit holes that you can think of that you kind of went down, came back from, and then were like, why did I do that?
The Bill Hartman stuff, the compression expand. I feel like a lot of coaches kind of go into this rabbit hole where they think there's this like super advanced and complicated theoretical explanation for all movement, and we try and explain everything, and there's so much discourse about whether or not like this foot angle is IR or ER, and it just gets really interesting. But I also think that at a certain point it just doesn't become useful anymore. I definitely like still use it to a certain extent just to try and explain things to people, or even just try and like conceptualize things that I don't necessarily have like a full understanding about. But I think that going into that and like really trying to get very philosophical with training was, I don't want to say a big waste of time, but it kind of was a little bit of a, like I definitely could have spent my time a little bit better doing something else.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the trap with the Bill Hartman movement model and PRI is that it's like it's fun to listen to and learn about and hear people really smart talk about it and frame it in a certain way. But then when you actually start applying things,
Mhm.
I've never found like a ton of use from it. I feel like I maybe went down the same path as like, I need to fully understand, the Bill Hartman model in order to coach powerlifting properly.
Yeah.
When it never really panned out that way.
It's
That
insane.
that The arc of like the PRI stuff has been interesting to watch because like a few years ago it kind of sprung up in like just like general S&C. That's where I was seeing it. And then just recently that started to get like real mainstream in powerlifting. And I feel like whenever it starts to spread more and more and more, you start to see it just get kind of like watered down and maybe misunderstood more and more and more. And now you have a
I
bunch
feel
of people just like doing breathing drills before they squat and convince themselves that they need to do it before they squat or they can't squat.
it's so romanticized because it's complicated,
Yeah.
but I feel like you shouldn't need to do PRI. The goal
Yeah.
isn't to do PRI. Like it's called restoration for a reason. Like it's meant to
Yeah.
bring from not okay to okay. Like if you're okay, I feel like there should be no spot for PRIs. You're just doing it for the sake of doing it, and now you're just, wasting 30 minutes in your session, sucking up all the oxygen in the gym.
I was having this conversation with someone at the gym the other day where it's kind of like they come into every session and are like you just see them like go at it for like 30 minutes with just all these breathing drills, and it's like the point isn't to, like, as you said, have to do these or else like you just can't squat. It's like it's supposed to be serving a purpose, and it's just like you're doing it without purpose at this point.
I see it
um
I see it similarly to like people who go on Instagram and they post their entire warm-up routine, and it's like this 45-minute complex of all these different hip drills and everything. And I think to myself, like, if you're doing this every single time you step into the gym, I feel like there's something wrong. If you need to
Yeah.
warm up for 45, 50, an hour, right? You're probably there's probably a issue that isn't being addressed, or it's either that or the warm-ups just aren't working. And if you're trying to improve your hip mobility so much that every single session you need to like work through hip mobility stuff, then whatever you're doing doesn't work.
yeah.
I don't know. I just think this.
Yeah.
What about you
Yeah,
guys?
the warm up should always be like a small supplement to your workout if there is a warm up to begin with. Like I hate warming up. I'd rather just get into like the barbell work. The only warm ups that I'm gonna do are what is like put on the sheet and that I have to do,
Yeah.
from my coach. But you're right. I feel like a lot of people are kind of getting in the habit of being like, okay, let me make this warm up as complicated as possible, and if it doesn't work, expand on it, add more stuff. When it's really just there's probably every year there's probably something else going on.
Are
I
there
know
any
for
other?
me personally, like when I get to the gym, I like to do some things aside from just like hop under the bar and go into it just for the sake of like I always feel cold when I go to the gym. So just like going in and doing something that's not just like barbell helps me feel warm. And I like taking like fewer warm-ups or like less reps of the actual movements when I go to actually start warming up. So for me, it's kind of nice to do something most of the time dynamic, go into the barbell stuff and just work up to my top set. But I'm not sitting there for like 40 minutes rolling around on the ground, like breathing out all the air in my lungs to serve no purpose. It's like that's the stuff that you see, and you're just like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
Are there any other
Yeah.
rabbit holes you guys have gone into?
I think when I first started, self-coaching in the sense where I was like writing down my training. I definitely I think I watched some Candido video where he said that undershooting was better than overshooting, and I just like got sucked into that like sub max high frequency stuff, and I probably didn't progress for like a year and a half because I was doing everything to RPE 3.
Mm. I got really deep into the optimal hypertrophy,
Yeah,
like
yeah, 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 yeah.
all like the N1 training things with the
yeah.
line
Yeah.
of pole and the 3D structure of all of your anatomy and whatever and functional anatomy. Like that, I also felt like I definitely wasted a lot of time, especially with powerlifting, where I'm not gonna prescribe a single arm iliac lat pull down with the ipsilateral rotation into what I mean, all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like now I'm just like, hey, overhand grip lat pull down, 3 sets, ascending to RP8, and like I definitely found myself dumbing down a lot of the accessories just for the sake of complexity's sake. Like I definitely found myself teaching people more accessory technique than I did SBD technique, which, as a powerlifting coach, you probably don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But also for the sake of just time. Like I remember one of the blocks that I wrote for myself, I had like a glute, I had like a squat, bench, glute, lats, and biceps day or something. And I was like trying to work specifically like these movements, and I was doing, a cable kickback with a at a certain degree of kicking back, and then doing a, row, cable row with, my rib cage down and all that stuff. And it just it again is I think it's the same thing as the PRI and the Bill Hartman things, where it sounds complicated and it seems cool and it feels like I'm doing something very unique and very optimal, when in reality I'm kind of just shooting myself in the head and just wasting all of my time trying to chase, something that doesn't really exist.
I feel like a
So
big
when
thing
you
with that too is that like a lot of the times there's going to be a disconnect between how you're envisioning something's going to go and like with what the actual result is going to be with the client. Like the client isn't going to understand what the purpose of this like crazy complicated movement is. Even if you explain it to them, they're going to be like, why can't I just do like a normal like overhand row
Yeah.
versus like the alternative? And it's like that's going to lose buy-in from the client. That's also just going to like most of the time produce a worse result in terms of like effort on their end. So I feel like the same thing applies to like the PRI stuff too, where it's kind of like if you can't get someone bought into like a breathing drill, like is there even any worth to it? Like even
Yeah.
if it does work, like I think that's an important component to think about too, especially when it comes to all the rabbit hole stuff.
Do you guys find that the clients that you have that are coaches, it's a lot easier to get the message across because they speak the same language?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's easier to um people who are coaches or clients who are coaches are usually just much better at giving good feedback and communicating in general. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think getting ideas across and just communicating back and forth is usually easier.
That was a big point of development for me. I felt like there was a point where, so I study cognitive science and just pretty much how like brain processing works and all that stuff and how we think. And I took a linguistics class just as an elective. I thought it was interesting, but I came out of that linguistics class kind of realizing like people don't know what I'm talking about half the time. And and there are like jokes that my friends make where, someone asked me like, yo, do you foam roll? And don't give me an answer like I, discombobulate the foam roller in all of my orifices. It's in order to stretch out the pectineus. He like didn't want the response that I was gonna give him. And I kind of needed to reassess the way that I was giving feedback in a way that made it so that it was understandable to the common folk, because it makes sense when I say pace in my like a block pacing. It makes sense when I say block pacing in my head, but there's a 99.9% of people in the world who don't know what that means. And I kind of had to kind of, I guess, create a model of my own training and then recreate that model in words that were like a little bit more digestible to people so that I can actually get the point across. And that was a big point of coaching development for me myself.
Do you ever find yourself in like the opposite situation where maybe someone wants a complicated answer and you don't have one to give them, so but you still want them to buy into what you're saying? Like if someone asked me, like a client asked me like, oh, should I be foam rolling before my sessions? My answer would probably be like, yeah, if you want to, maybe go for it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily have this like long complicated answer like, oh, in this instance, maybe like whatever.
Yeah.
But if I say, sure, go for it if you want to, that might not get a whole lot of buy-in from the client. So do you
Oh,
ever
for
have that?
sure.
Yeah.
I think there are times, I don't think I necessarily have moments where clients will ask me for the more complicated answer, but I bet that all of us kind of have situations where clients ask us things and we just go, it's not that deep.
Yeah.
And they kind of get a little bit defeated from that because they kind of want it to be that deep.
Yeah.
And, they're just like, oh, are there any warm-ups I should do for XYZ? And I'm like, hey, man, do you feel okay? Get under the bar, just squat. And they kind of want that. They wanted that feeling of like, I'm doing something that's very optimal. And I think you kind of just have to assess the person and see why they're kind of asking you the question. Um, Especially like, I think there are people who uh, are genuinely asking, and there are people who like actually want to know why.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to figure out whether or not one person is really other. It's pretty cool.
I feel like some people do that with technique too. Like they'll send videos or whatever it may be, and like you give them feedback, but in their mind they think that there should be something deeper in a sense, and sometimes it's just not. And like being able to kind of explain that point where it's just like it's not that deep to where we need to nitpick, the angle of like your foot when you're in the bottom of the hole. It's like,
Sometimes I also
so,
forget people want to learn. Like
yeah,
not everyone just wants to put weight on the bar. Some people actually want to like understand the sport or
Yeah.
understand the theory behind it. And um I just sometimes I don't want to give that because it might ruin them and it might just make them like overly neurotic about things.
Yeah, that's a hard like line to toe, is not like creating an issue with their mindset by getting more complicated than you need to get.
But that's the relationship. Like I feel like if you don't have that relationship with the client, you're never going to figure that out. And I feel like
Yeah.
that kind of goes to the communication thing of, coaches who don't talk to their lifters and they're just kind of like coaching them or, weekly basis, weekly check-ins, and they're just very cordial, I guess. But if you're not getting that out of the lifter, if you don't really understand who the lifter is as a person, it's a very like crucial part of the training that you miss out on.
feel like there's a lot of lifters who'll just give like a shit ton of feedback, kind of like what you're saying with like the whole paralysis by analysis thing with technique and whatnot. They'll give you like, they'll just have a good day, and then they'll just give you like 3 essays of feedback, like trying to get you to give more feedback,
yeah,
it applies to like technique and everything too. It's just like if you reinforce that there's stuff to say in return, they're probably gonna be more prone to nitpicking themselves. Like I've found people who've given like, they send like their 5 minute audio message and like 2 essays after like a tertiary bench day with 2 accessories or something. And it's like, I don't even reciprocate. Like I just, I'll consider the feedback, but like there's some things like I just don't even acknowledge. And I found that that works oftentimes for a lot of people. Like it works better than not nitpicking back. You know what I mean? Same thing with technique, programming, whatever. It's just like, and also like what you're saying with Alex, what you're saying about like people who just want to learn, like there's only so much you can teach without teaching people to be
Yeah.
too neurotic and too nitpicky with things. You know what I mean? Like you've got to meet halfway and kind of recognize when people like actually just want to learn versus like the neurotic ones who are just trying to, I don't know, get more for I don't know, get more for less. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but you know what I mean.
It kind of goes back to what we were saying about the confidence that you have as a coach on how to talk to your clients, where I think we were all in this point maybe, earlier where we felt like we needed to give feedback or we need to give a lot of feedback because that's how the client gets their money's worth. Um, and you start kind of unintentionally making people neurotic because it's instead of a simple like, this looks fine and blah blah blah, you're kind of like, this looks fine if you were to do this, then I would do this, and you're kind of just now you're just telling people things that they don't even need to hear. But it's kind of for your own sake of being like, okay, I'm actually able to provide value when in reality there's no value being given.
It's like there's some days that literally just go well, and that's it. That's all there really is to say. I think Marcellus posted an Instagram story about this whenever it was, but he was like, some days are going to be good and that's it. But sometimes if that's the case, like tell them why it went well,
Yeah.
like like there's probably some stuff you can elaborate on without just rambling and getting neurotic and getting nitpicky. There obviously is the other side too, where there's just too much to say a lot, but yeah, like on the days where things go well and there really isn't much to say, I just usually I don't just, like it and go away. Like I'll tell them why I thought it went well and stuff like that. But yeah, for sure. I agree with you.
That's the goal.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The
That
goal is
that's
to
also
have
like,
everyone say it looks good.
yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, there are coaches out there who do that though,
Okay.
where even on the bad days, like, oh, you'll get it next time or something like that.
Yeah, you'll get it next time.
better
So
luck next time.
I feel like that's also the uh like a bigger question of what our job is. Because if our job was just to put more weight on the bar, then we could get away with it looks good because it genuinely does just look good. But I think that if we're trying to create the coach athlete relationship and also just like develop lifters, then that's where, you know, Devin, what you were saying about how you're not just saying looks good, but you're actually, you know, giving them reasons why, and you're actually telling them that like, hey, this looks good because of XYZ. And that's like the relationship part of it. Like the looks good is the progress part of it, and then the other stuff is all the extra stuff that, you know, we also get paid to do.
Yeah, you have a post on that too, which is really good about just like, you know, meeting your client where they're at and forming a good relationship with them.
Man, I love my clients.
Oh,
Sweet. Going to the next topic.
Yep.
What is the next topic that we had?
You want to do meet day handling?
Sure.
Yeah. What do you guys have to say? What we'll say biggest meet day like sins from a coach. Probably come up
In
with
terms of
like
like general rules.
yeah, or like
Whenever I see someone benching, you know, less than 60 kilos, and I see him making like 7.5, 10 kilo jumps,
Yeah.
you know, that's probably no good. Seeing people, you know, make a 5 kilo jump into a 15 kilo jump, maybe
Yeah.
they're planning that out better.
That's just
Seeing someone put chalk on their thighs instead of baby powder.
my pet peeve, my biggest pet peeve going to meets, especially going to meets like by myself where I don't really know anyone else, is coaches who seem like they're more invested in the social aspect of a meet than they are in the athlete.
yeah.
And I saw this the other day where I saw a coach in the audience just talking to the friends, and I saw the lifter in the back corner of the warm-up room. And
Nice.
when three out, they just go to the lifter and go, "Hey, like we're up," and they just walk
Wow.
over, and that's pretty much it. And it's like you're doing your job, like you're still doing it right, but also again, it's always like the relationship. Like you're there not because you want to make the guy, you know, go 9 for 9. You're there because you want to make him go 9 for 9 and have a good day and be happy with how the day finished and not feel like they're neglected the entire day, except for those, you know, combined 130 seconds of lifting.
Like what I'm about to say could apply to anything, not just handling, but like I feel like handling and meet day performance kind of ties everything together as a powerlifter because that's the end goal. But like this is a thought I have a lot, and it sounds really stupid just in writing and the sentence itself, but it's like these people pay you, like your clients are only going to be powerlifting for X amount of time. They've picked you to be their coach. You're like fully responsible for their training. If you're going to be the lazy handler on meet day or make really bad calls or whatever it is, it's like you're taking however long their prep was and just throwing it out the window when they've picked you to be your coach. You know what I mean? Like it's a big responsibility. It's just, I mean, it's powerlifting. It's not like, you know, you're not like a financial advisor or something like that, but you get what I'm saying. Like there's a big responsibility being held on meet day, and it's important to, you know, take charge of that.
Yeah. I don't know that it really matters how like, I don't know, grand scheme of things, how important it is in reality. Like it is like you said, it's your job that you're being paid to do. You need to take it, you know, as seriously as you can, regardless of how serious it really is.
Not being prepared is a big one.
Yeah.
Like warm-ups.
Yeah.
I literally shared a rack with someone the other day they were finding their bench rack height as they were warming up, and it ended up being like 4 notches too high, which is like kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But especially with warm-ups, not knowing the lifters' warm-ups, I get that like some lifters are very autonomous and they also train on keys and they kind of just know what they need to take, but just kind of making the lifter feel like they are prepared to deal with any scenario that does show up on meet day.
I was gonna say for me, like I feel like it's an effort thing, especially when it's like a coach handling the athlete versus just like, oh, it's your boy handling like the athlete for a friend or whatever it may be. Like when it's a coach handling an athlete, and it's kind of what Devin said, where it's just like, this is your job. Like you have to put effort into this because you're being paid to do this. So when you see people making lazy mistakes, like there have been people who like consistently forget to like have their lifters put in rack heights and stuff like that, or just like in the warm up sense, like forgetting or not necessarily like telling people when you want to take warm ups, or not, loading warm ups on the bar yourself for your athlete. Like small stuff like that just goes to show that like you're not trying, essentially. Like you're putting in the least, trying to get the most, and it's just like I feel like that's my biggest pet peeve when I see that and it spans throughout the entire day. Like most of the time, it's not just like one instance, it's like the same person just throughout the entire day, just putting in low effort. And it oftentimes reflects in the performance of the athlete.
Yeah.
It's all relationships. It's all relationships. It's like every, not even just this, it's like every relationship. Just remember a birthday, remember an anniversary, like the same thing. Remember when they
Can't
need
forget.
it's the same, it's all the same thing. You know?
A big pet peeve of mine, I don't know if this is a mistake or whatever, but like a big pet peeve is people who don't want to work with other people in the warm-up room. Not work in necessarily, but like everyone there is on the same team, whether you're competitors or not, like everyone should be working in one system. Like figure out an order for warm-ups, warm up with people in the same platform, taking the same issue openers. You know what I mean? Like work as a team. Like at CNATS, dude, this was such a pain in the ass. I had my lifter who is a female, and then three other females on the same rack, and then this equipped dude who was taking 300 kilos for a last warm up on the same rack. Like he was there first, but he was just like not at the rack during the entire time we were like organizing an order. And then he started warming up during the first flight, and we thought he was part of the first flight, and then we realized, oh, he's just taking an hour and a half to warm up. So like we have these four females taking under 300 pounds for the last warm up, and then we got to strip the bar and put 300 kilos on. It's like work together with the people in the warm up room. Everyone there has the same goal to get their lifter on the platform. It's like same concept as someone comes up to you all flustered, like, oh my God, there's, all these racks are full. Can we quickly take 170 on your rack when there's, 225 on the bar? It's like, no, we want to help you, but it's like, we wouldn't even
find a better rack.
Yeah, like we wouldn't even be helping you. Like no one wins here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That cooperation made me fall in love with Eric Hogan.
Oh yeah, he does well.
Every meet that I've handled with him, he's always helped me load it. Like I don't know why, but he's always helping me load. He's always helping me strip weights. And I was like, damn, this guy's for real.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like help other people load the bar too. Like if you had nothing to do for a whole flight, like just be of use. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a big thing.
The people who just like point and tell you what they want on the bar and just like
I
sit
hate
on the
that.
sidelines and are
Stop
just like,
doing
yeah,
that,
2
yeah.
minutes, 220 on the bar.
Like
And they don't even tell you like when they want to go.
That was happening at CNS too. There was a coach there who was like point his athlete is warming up and there's like a few other people on the rack and he'll like point like, all right, 220. I'm like, who are you pointing at?
You pick up those plates, put them on the bar. Come on.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You guys feel like there are an equal amount of coaching handling no-nos at these national meets as just local meets or even state meets? Or do you feel like
you're gonna see the same mistakes. I feel like you're going to see them at a larger scale at the local meets, just like more often. But I think the bigger one that you see at the national meets is just more so what Devin was saying, like people being like less likely to let you work in or like more territorial on their rack, and things like that, and just like harder to jump in at a spot.
more personality based no-nos than
Yeah, I think people are more stressed in general. It's just harder to work together.
I've never been to one of these big meets, so I don't know, but I feel like if I do go, I'm gonna fold and get scared, and someone's gonna yell at me, and I'm just gonna be like, "I'm sorry," and I'm gonna leave.
I love getting into the arguments in the warm-up room.
I suck at the competition and like holding my ground. That happened one time at a meet back in February, and this guy like thought that because it was a 2-platform meet, and because his lifter was going earlier in the flight on platform 1 and my lifter was going later on the flight in platform 2, that his lifter should take all of her warm-ups first before we even touch the bar.
Oh, let's go.
And this is like the first time I ever like argued with someone in public, and I came out of that. And again, Eric Hogan, I love you, because he came in and he was like, I'll help you load, I'll help you do whatever. Like I know this guy isn't being cooperative, so I'll help you. But I came out of that meet and I just kind of sat there. I was like, damn, this is the first time I ever argued with someone. Felt good, powerful, but also
yeah, no, yeah. Those arguments in the war room only start from people just being selfish and not wanting to work together with people.
What about from an athlete standpoint? What's some meet day no-nos as an athlete? I think
Stop running away. Tell me
Yes,
what.
running away. Hate that.
Yeah.
I hate turning one direction for 2 seconds, turning and then turning back, and your lifter's gone, and you got to start warming up in 5 minutes.
Peeing. Stop peeing.
And then you text them, and it's like, oh, I'm hanging with some friends, like, you know, all the way in the back of the venue. It's like, dude, you're like 20 minutes out from your opener right now. Like, we gotta go.
Yeah,
One
I
of-
think I
Go
think I
ahead.
might have talked with it on the podcast at one point before, but it was I had an athlete. It was Alan. I'll just name drop him. It was Alan. You won't
Oh,
care.
no.
It was the first time handling him. First time, or no, it was his first meet. And he would take a warm up, you know, rack the bar, whatever, and then like put on a hat and then just disappear into the crowd. And I'm just like, I cannot find him for like 12 minutes. And he's just like having a conversation with like 3 people. I'm like, dude, Alan, you gotta stay by my side, man.
Not
That's probably
having
the biggest pet peeve.
urgency. I feel like not having a sense of urgency is also
Yeah.
If I'm
Yeah.
timing your warm-ups and you take 2 minutes to wrap your wrist wraps.
Yeah.
That's like when I say like, you know, you're going in 2 minutes, and then in 2 minutes I say go, and then they're like, okay, and then they walk over the chalk bowl and start putting on the wrist wraps. Like, no, dude, that's not what I meant. I mean, you're going in 2 minutes.
Do you ever not like it when lifters ask you too many questions?
I was gonna say something similar to this, where it's kind of like the people who, and a lot of the times it's like their first meet or something like that. So it's kind of like, to some degree, you can't get mad at them, but it's just the people who like, they're asking a ton of questions. They, you know, they just have no clue what to do, and they are just very discombobulated in terms of like, where should they be sitting? Like, what should they be doing? When should they be doing what? And they just ask a ton of questions, are always trying to do something. And it's just like, calm down. Like, I will tell you when to lift. We'll, you know, tell you when you need to do what. But that's definitely something that I've run into.
I get that. I feel like that's a big part of buy-in.
Yeah.
Just making sure that, or I guess even like, let's say I have a lifter and it's their first meet, and you know, we're on a call and we're talking about attempts, and I'm just talking about, you know, how the meet is going to flow. And the last thing I'll always say is like, I've done this a lot of times. I do this at least every 3 weeks. I know what's going on. Give me your full faith, and I promise you that it's going to be okay. And if they really do trust me, they'll actually like, you know, not ask questions, and they'll just sit there, and I'll be like, you know what, thank you, appreciate it.
You know what? Another pet peeve I have on meet days. I know you can't like control when you have to go pee, but people that like 3 times within warming up on squat is like, can I go pee? Do I have time to go pee? It's like, dude, can we hold it and just wait until squats are done, and then maybe you can go pee? But yeah, like there's no other time where people are just physically incapable of holding their urine when they're warming up for a lift.
Sometimes people got pee.
Like Alex. Like Alex. You want to go on to the next one? I think the equipment one that Devin brought up was interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
You can introduce it.
Sure. I think the whole like argument, well, not even argument, but like the whole idea of it is, if you should like train on disadvantageous equipment for the sake of practice, or if you have the equipment available or the means to make the equipment better, like for example, you know, chalking your back or putting a shelf liner or something on the bench to make it from, or prevent it from sliding. Should you do that, or should you make your instance in training more challenging for yourself, so when you're in theory thrown with the opportunity on meet day, you are prepared for that?
We talked about this, about, you know, that post came out, and it was just saying like, don't train on super fancy equipment because it makes you dependent on it, it makes you weak. But also, powerlifting is inherently a very specific sport that is really only like 3 things, and as specific as possible. If we can get as specific as possible, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't. You don't play basketball for us.
I was gonna say the same analogy, where it's like, you're playing a sport, you're gonna use the equipment that they use in game, and not just like, play basketball with fucking garbage can just to, you know, be hard. I think my whole philosophy on that would just be like, make it as comp standard as possible, within reason. Like if you have all comp equipment, comp rack, Ohio power bar, kilo plates, don't just lift on, bumpers to, increase variability.
It does create a sense of grit though. I feel like if I don't know, like Ashton Ruska, I feel like does this a lot, where he'll purposely train or like without knee sleeves, or he'll purposely train on like massive plates, or he'll go to like a LA Fitness. I don't know if he does it on purpose or if it's because of the situation, but that's definitely something that he takes pride in, where he'll be like sleeveless squat or like raw squat or something like that, right? And
Oh yeah.
from a psychological standpoint, it definitely makes you feel like I'm like very strong and not just powerlifter strong.
Yeah, I would say, I guess if you do it to an extent, like lift comp standard to an extent that's not going to make you neurotic about not having the equipment. Like if you can't survive in a commercial gym and like you know if you're like, oh, I may as well just skip the session because I don't have my TSS pad. It's like, yeah, that's a different issue in and of itself. It's more of a mindset thing, I think. Like if you need that, I don't know, mental grit, like you said, then maybe, yeah, do some benching on a commercial bench just to know that you can, but also use the comp rack. It'll help. It's more specific.
I feel like it only becomes a problem at either of like the full spectrum like ends, or the full ends of the spectrum. Yeah. Like if you absolutely need like a brand new TSS pad with a brand new bar, and it has to be stainless steel, and you need like a shelf liner on top of chalk on your back, on top of chalk on your butt, on top of the carpet, like with hyper V's to even do like a tertiary bench day. It's kind of like, I feel like that's taking it to the so neurotic side of things that you would benefit from not doing that. And then on the other side of things, there's a point where it's like the equipment that you train on can be so detrimental to what you can actually do training wise that you would benefit from making things more specific. So I feel like when it gets on either of those ends, that's where there's actual like merit to being like, hey, let's do this instead. Whereas like that area in the middle is kind of just like, it doesn't really matter.
That was my question. I was gonna ask, let's say you have lifters who go on vacation or something, or they just train at a different gym. What's the leniency of being able to say, this session was bad because of equipment and not just because it was actually bad?
I feel like if someone's on vacation in that scenario, it's like just do what you can.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Same thing applies for like people who are only in close proximity to like a certain gym with certain equipment. Like we train at Spindell. Like if there was a gym closer with better accessory machines and the same equipment as Spindell, I'd probably go there because we hardly have any accessories. Just an example, but like just do what you can when you can, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like to train on a rack, like a cage. Sorry, not a combo. I don't know why.
Really?
I enjoy it more. I don't know why. I think it's the grit thing. I think it's just the fact that I feel like I'm not being a little like powerlifter prissy boy.
Yeah.
And I'm actually like doing it as if I were to do it in, like a more bodybuilding gym or something like that. I think it just feels cool.
So
yeah, but what makes it?
What's
what
up?
is it?
What's up?
Chris, you can go.
Okay, I was gonna say, what makes a cage like harder though? Like what's the downfall to squatting in a cage other than a combo?
I just feel like I'm being surrounded.
It's epic.
Yeah, it's epic. I'm being like, I walk out of the cage after a squat and I'm like unleashed.
I got you.
Yeah, like they're holding me back and I'm squatting it, and then I step out and I'm like,
Fair enough.
That's how
What
I
were you saying, Devin?
I was gonna say, shit. Did I forget? You're too
right,
cute, Alex. You're distracting me.
podcast over.
I think I was gonna say like go along like the bell curve thing that Andy said. It's like you can only, I guess, influence yourself so much to be on the, end spectrum where it's like, oh, I need this piece of equipment or else I'm screwed, versus on the other side, you I don't know, it just like applies to everything. Like even with technique, like me and Madison made a post about this where it's you know, like you see the people on bench who are like twisting their wrists like 15, 20 times to get the perfect stack.
Yeah.
Like same thing with squat, like they're false on racking 3 times, but if they false on rack 2 times, they're screwed. You know what I mean? It's like just set yourself up in the situation that you think is going to be repeatable. Like there's an argument which I don't necessarily entirely disagree with, where it's like, um, I mean, I guess I primarily do disagree with it because I'm kind of agreeing with everyone here, but you know, getting some exposure to like pound plates and like the power cage like that Alex likes can be good every now and then because it prevents you from being too far on that end of the spectrum where it's like, oh, you get too used to being spoiled with this equipment, you end up needing it. And same thing is like, you know, there's going to be some meet warm-up rooms where you can't use that. So it's like if you're completely out of practice doing that, then you know, what are you going to do?
This is a somewhat irrelevant question, but I feel like it is somewhat relevant. When you guys are programming, how much general strength things are you guys giving compared to very specific powerlifter strength things that you're giving?
What would you say is a general strength thing and not a powerlifting strength?
Maybe like a seated shoulder press or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say everyone's program is going to have,
I guess
general.
things that you wouldn't say have a good direct transference into powerlifting, but may have either centrally through the nervous system it has a benefit there, or just building strength or just quality tissue in another range of motion that's like completely irrelevant to powerlifting.
I'd say still, yeah, I'd say everyone has a few things like I don't know how much a bicep curl is directly going to impact your
That's
SPD. I don't know how much a lateral raise or like you said, like a dumbbell overhead press or something like that. But I think it's weird to just completely neglect certain movements or muscles just because they're not directly specific to your sport. I'd rather just get general hypertrophy work in, and even if it's not like I said, like a bicep curl, but just get more jacked.
I guess what I'm thinking of is like especially since Andrew has been coaching some equip lifters and that I've been paying attention to. I've been thinking about the central nervous effect of squatting like 180% with reps and what that actually does for your raw training and whether or not that could be something that may be actually beneficial to raw powerlifting, which is just like bolstering the hell out of your nervous system through something like that, or maybe using other things like a yoke. I don't know. These aren't things that I've like actually used, but it's just thoughts that I have in bed.
I was talking to Fuego from Northeastern, the 67 equipped lifter. And he was saying that I think this is what he was saying, that his best raw blocks are directly after his like equipped prep. Like he'll
That's what I would
compete
think.
at nationals equipped and like come off his block where he's handling like 100 and whatever percent week after week after week. And then he takes off the equipment and he'll get like, 90 whatever percent of his 1 rep max on his back. And it's like, feels like nothing because the weight's still on your back, regardless of if you're wearing a suit or not. And he's used to having like 240 kilos on his back when he raw squats like maybe 200 or 195. I forget what he squats, but yeah, he said that his training goes well directly after an equipped prep, and it goes well when it's raw.
That's what I thought. I feel like even though equipped training is perhaps a little bit, it's like the technique is still different from raw. You're still, flexing at the hip, extending at the knee and whatnot. And those muscles still need to contract. Those muscles still need to work. And if you're a 500-pound squatter and you squat 700 pounds in reps, you're still putting yourself under 700 pounds and you know what 700 pounds feels like. So when you put 550 on the bar, it's one, it's not going to feel like anything, but two, to a certain extent, your muscles and your nervous system have adapted to 700 pounds. And I don't think this is at anything I'll ever use. I probably will never program equip squatting for raw lifters, but it's just a thought that I had that I think might be useful, especially for like squat. I don't know if you guys have ever had this thought where me and Eric were talking about this, where you can't really out leverage a squat, and to a certain extent, squatting programming is pretty straightforward, and there's a reason why you see very strong squatters with like very basic cookie cutter and very dumb programs, just because it seems like there's more of the bell curve is a lot more centralized with squat. I don't know if you guys have noticed that.
I think it's the opposite, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just myself, but like I found, I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but like I found people on my roster and just in general have more variability in their squat programming compared to bench and deadlift. Like I find it harder to finally hit that, golden spot for squat compared to bench and deadlift for someone.
Interesting.
Is that that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, no, that is what I'm saying. I feel the opposite. I just felt like just thinking about it now, like there's probably more in common with all of my squat programs than there are with bench and deadlift. I feel like with bench and deadlift, they exist more on the poles than squat, but I mean, probably a systems thing. It's
Yeah,
definitely
definitely a systems thing, in my opinion.
When you say it's hard to out leverage a squat, what do you mean by that?
because you can cheat a deadlift and you can cheat a bench.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah. You can't really like even though you have, femurs that are like little gummy bears, you still gotta squat.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Gummy bears is an interesting little analogy there.
Let's go.
Anything else we want to go over?
Do we have time for another topic?
Yeah, if you want another topic.
We talk about that. We got one more, right?
The coaching systems.
Coaching systems. I mean, yeah, it kind of is on topic, I guess.
What do you guys like think that even like means? You know what I mean? Like what defines your coaching system, do you think? What contributes to your system as a whole?
That's yeah, I always heard that I've never done a Pat Davidson seminar, but
the models.
yeah, he makes you, is what I've heard, like when you do like his either online or in-person seminar, you got to put your system down on paper, like write out like what is your training model. And that seems like such a daunting thing. I've been trying to do it recently. It's on my whiteboard. Like I have just a Google Doc and I'm trying to like write out like what is my training system. So I haven't finished it. But it's a hard question to answer, to have like a step-by-step, this is my approach.
I think of it as like a training flow chart or like my decision-making process. That's what I think a system is. Or that and also
process.
Yeah, or that and also our like we all have kind of implicit biases in terms of like if we were to say write a powerlifting program, all of ours would look different just because we all have like some of us maybe, more biased towards high rep benching or whatever. So I think that it's like a combination between your biases, your programming biases, but also just a bunch of if-then statements.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing, basically.
I have a good question. When you guys write a block, what's the very first thing you put in the sheet, other than like the name and date and shit like that? Like, what's the first thing that you write to dictate what the block looks like? Like, are you going to write into day one or what?
Split?
Yes, the split.
Yeah, also the split. We got that little calendar at the top.
Yeah,
I go right to that and I go, these are the days this person is training. Like, how do I want the splits to look like?
Yeah, I'll do the split and then I'll do like the comp work layout. And then I get just like, I get from there accessories, things like that.
Do you guys write weeks or do you guys write days first?
What do you mean?
Do you go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or do you go Monday week 1, Monday week 2, Monday week 3? In terms of just like
I read a week. Yeah, I read Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
I read. Oh, okay. I go the other. Oh, actually, I mean, it depends. I think it depends on who the person is.
Why?
Just how long I've worked with them. I think that you can kind of, especially with like, if you found that, golden microcycle, and the way I kind of think of it is that every single session already has a purpose and it already serves that purpose. And the way that I think I like to think about developing a program is I like to work in and out. So I like to think of the day and then how do we peak the week and then how do we peak the block and then how do we peak the, the mesocycle. So if I already have the day written out and I'm in that phase where I'm like, okay, how do I figure out the pacing of this? I like to think about the pacing of each individual session. Maybe I'm missing something then.
No. Yeah, the reason I go week to week is because although you're trying to like you said, like I think that I kind of have a similar approach where like, day week might, but I think it's hard to progress a single day out for an entire block without taking into account how each day affects the day following it. So I would rather just write out a week. Like, okay, this is the week of training, and then go from there.
Yeah, I also think it's just from like a maybe a I don't want to say efficiency, or maybe like a logistic standpoint or ergonomic standpoint. If you write the days out first, all your work is centralized in like the beginning of the block writing process. Does that make sense? Because then every week that follows it after, like within the rest of the block, is just almost like a copy of that week, that first week.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily writing another week. Like you're just writing the first week and then you write the rest of the weeks. Whereas if you go week by week, I'm sorry, session by session, and you go throughout the weeks, you write the first session, finish the week, second session, finish the week. So your work is more spread out throughout the entire block writing process. I don't think it matters though.
No, I don't think it matters.
It was a thought that I had. I don't know. We can go back to talking about systems. I feel like that this is a pretty interesting topic about the systems that, well, so Chris and I have foreign coaches, foreign as in not American, which because we're all American. But so I'll ask Chris if you have noticed anything different of Kelly and how she programs compared to what we called like the American meta of programming.
Yeah, I've been trying to think about this. I don't know that I see any of these massive or even like super noticeable differences based on location with Kelly. I think she, like we were saying before, I think before the recording started, she definitely biases towards some like higher frequency, higher than typical frequency with some of her athletes that you probably wouldn't see. But I don't know if that's really an Australia thing or just a Kelly thing. And and the other guy that I was talking about earlier, Tom something from Australia. He's another big coach in Australia with kind of the complete opposite philosophy. So I don't know if the higher frequency with the high level lifter stuff is really a Kelly thing or an Australia thing. I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that question as to like what the Australian meta is for programming.
Yeah, it's probably just whatever echo chamber you're in.
Yeah.
And just whatever you're hearing on a day-to-day basis. I personally don't see a ton of differences between the way I program and the way that JJ programs. JJ's from Singapore, so he is still pretty foreign, but I think the biggest difference was just the intensity of the accessories. And they're pretty low. We never really go past like a 8. And I thought that was pretty interesting when I first looked at the programming, but everything else is pretty similar. But I think that's pretty cool that like powerlifting, these like programming ideologies have spread so vastly that even people who are culturally, societally like so different from us still kind of do very similar things.
Yeah, I think maybe if you had that question like 20 years ago, where social media wasn't where all the information was, there might be a different answer where you have like Bulgarian training and like training that's like literally specified by location. But at this point, everyone's kind of going to the same spot and they can interpret it differently, but everything's on social media and online for the most part.
I also think there's a lot of semantics discussions. And Stuart Locke, I love him. I think he's so entertaining. Whether or not I agree with some of the things that he says, I think he's one of the most entertaining people. But he was on a podcast talking about conjugate, and I don't remember exactly the verbiage that he uses, but just listening to that podcast, I could be like, oh, whatever you're talking about right now is just low RP singles for us. Right. And they call it like speed work or whatever. Right. And we just call it, submax singles or something like that. But it's all essentially the same thing. And I think the theory behind it, the concepts about how we get stronger, I think they're all pretty much the same thing. It's just a matter of how we get there. Or just even the ways that we talk about it is a little bit different. I also do think that we're a little bit more, I guess, process based, where they may be a little bit more principle based. Seems like, especially with the conjugate people, they have principles of how to get stronger, and they base a lot of their programming off of that, where I think we at times don't think too much about that, and we just look at the numbers on the page and we go, oh, this is making you stronger, so let's do that. whereas they seem like they're like, we have to bolster the nervous system, and so let's do this. But I think it ends up just kind of going to the same spot anyways.
Would you say that having, a principle-based approach is necessary to have the system?
I think that having biases might be more important. Because what's up? Yeah, and like defaults. Because we do this on a day-to-day basis, but I don't think any of us are thinking or writing programs thinking about principles. We're always thinking more about the individual, but we're also thinking about, again, like our models and what our decision-making process is going into writing these programs. But none of us are ever thinking like, this person's, I can't even think of an example, but I would probably say that we're all a little bit more models based rather than, or like individual models based than we are principle based.
Yeah, I think it would probably come down to how you define principle, how you define model or method, things like that. But yeah, I think I would agree.
I also feel like the principles, some of them are like pretty simple. A lot of it is just like you need to train to get stronger, and like Andy said this in his video about like breaking plateaus, but he was saying like you can do too much and you can do too little. And it's like don't do too much so that you fatigue yourself and you get hurt, or don't do too little that you're just, moving the bar around and just kind of dancing.
Yeah, I think that was it was I think it was Greg Knuckles who said it originally. I don't know what said it originally, but who I heard it from before. But it's like it doesn't need to be that deep. Like if you are not progressing and you're always fatigued and sore, you should probably do less. And if you're not progressing and you're never fatigued and sore, you should probably do more. And it can be as simple as that at the base.
It's literally like a 4 quadrant, and it's like not progressing, tired, do less, not progressing, not tired, do more, progressing, tired, okay, progressing, not tired, okay. And it's like, it's pretty
That's
much
all it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I like getting into the complicated stuff and then also finishing the sentence with it doesn't matter. It's so fun. It just invalidates our jobs completely.
It ain't that deep.
Yeah, like you just do it yourself, bro. It's not that deep. So I think it's cool.
You just put more weight on the bar each week. It's not that hard.
That's what I'm saying. Just do that. I have a question for you guys.
Sure.
How is so the difference between this year's CNETs and last year's CNETs in terms of the status of TSP has been night and day. You guys have expanded so much, and you guys are more nationally and internationally recognized now. Do you guys feel like there was a psychological difference this year going into CNETs, feeling like you belonged more? Or do you guys still kind of feel like this little like collective of guys just kind of going to this national meet like, hey, like we have a few guys here?
I don't know if Chris and Andy will disagree or agree, but I feel like for me, yes, there was a night and day difference in the past year. But the answer to your question is yes, I felt more comfortable, but I don't think it was publicity or growth thing. It was more of just like, oh, we've been to CNETs before, and we've done like a shit ton of local meets and just other meets in general between last year's CNETs and this year's CNETs, and gained a lot more experience compared to last year's CNETs.
Yeah,
I think I would 100% agree with what Devin said. It was more so like, I've been here before, so it's not as daunting. It's just a more familiar spot, and I'm just more confident in my ability as a handler and just like being in the meet atmosphere in general, not necessarily from any growth of like the business or anyone's roster. It's just like I think I'm better at this now. I've been here before, so it's less scary.
It was definitely cool meeting people that like you've run into and had conversations with online that like you're not going to meet anywhere else aside from like a national meet. But aside from that, like I agree with both of you guys in that like it's just a matter of okay, we have this experience now, like we know what to do. We know that like it's not a situation of like, oh, we don't belong here. Like we do belong here. And we were able to get that by going through that feeling of, oh, we don't know if we belong here type thing the first time around, or just that like uncertainty of being at a national meet for the first time. And I feel like that's daunting at first, but then once you do it, you're kind of like, oh, just like a local meet basically.
I think I'm approaching that point. Like I think I've just recently been able to sleep before I have to handle.
Nice.
I'm a nervous wreck before it, but I think now I was thinking that like within the last maybe few months, just especially going to a ton of these like Massachusetts meets and being like around you guys where you guys are comfortable and I just feel like I'm kind of just like tagging along, but then eventually kind of establishing my own identity within those meets. Um, it's only been maybe 2 or 3 months, but I feel like I belong at meets now, which is a cool feeling where I think especially like last year around this time or maybe even before that, um, I felt like just the friend that was handling people. And now I feel like there's people who, I can go to a meet and there's a chance that someone might know me on the internet and I don't follow them back, which is like such a cool feeling. But then
Something big for me also was comparing last CNATs to this year CNATs. Was I only had one person last year. I had 5 people this year on my individual roster. And last year I was warming up with like Chris and Andy and multiple other TSP females, right? This year was different where I was only warming up with people I knew with like 1 or 2 of my lifters. And the everyone else, I was just kind of like, oh, let's see if I can find someone I know or someone who I saw in the previous session who knew what they were doing in the warm-up room. And it was nice like connecting with those people who like other like-minded coaches who were good, who could keep up the pace with the warm-up room, who knew what they were doing. Like I don't know, that was a cool feeling where it's like, oh, I'm one of these people who know what they're doing, where these other coaches are doing the exact same thing, where they're like, oh, we're trying to find an efficient rack where people are, a rack full of these good coaches, and people were trying to go to our rack, and there was one session where I handled someone, and then I stayed for the next session, and I just kind of stayed with the same people because we all like thought we were all doing a good job.
cool. You guys are outside of your TSP microcosm,
Yeah,
but
pretty much.
still in it to a certain extent. Because I think when I first heard of you guys, the first thing that I noticed was that you could tell you guys are friends. It's like one of the first like groups of coaches where I really thought that you guys would eat food outside of the office.
Oh, we have.
And like
Thanks,
now
Devin.
now that I do know you, now that I do know you, that thought has grown like exponentially. And I'm like, oh, these guys probably shower together. So
Oh, shit. We've also done that.
so how do you feel about going into Nats? Like Nats? Because I feel like CNATs is still, still CNATs. I don't know if you guys think about that differently, but going into Nats
Yeah.
in Utah, you guys are, I would assume you guys are all going.
I have no one going.
Oh no, Andy's not going.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
have
Andy.
2 lifters. Yeah, I think I'm more like nervous than CNATs, but I think that's more so just because I had been to CNATs before, and it's kind of the same thing we talked about before. Like, oh, I had been here before, so it's less scary. Open Nats is just a different, I guess a different thing. But I assume next year Open Nats will probably be the same thing as this year's CNATs.
Pretty cool.
I feel good. I think the whole Sophia thing this year was a really good experience in terms of like, battling it out for first, because she's probably going to be in a decently similar scenario at Nats, where it might be like a top 3 or top 5 kind of thing. But yeah, like it's kind of what I said about like comparing 2023 to 24 CNATs. It was just like really good experience. Like I had 5 people and I felt like I was sufficiently prepared for everyone, and they all had good meets. And Nats is, it's just another national meet kind of thing. Like I'm not really intimidated by it. It's a longer distance than anything we're used to, but yeah, just like feeling good about the experience that we have.
Cool. We're coaches now. Well, you guys are coaches now. I'll
You're
I'll,
coach.
I'll get there. I'll get there next year, but you guys are coaches now. That's like I was telling Devin this earlier, like today, and I was saying how you guys have all gotten to this kind of echelon where if people want to get taken to the next level, they're like seriously going to consider you. And not just people in Massachusetts, but like people everywhere. And I think I'm trying to get to that point, but it's just cool seeing like you guys were the Massachusetts coaches and now you guys are like, you know, like creeping up on the people that we call the goats or the modern day goats, which I think is really sick.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Dude, it's so funny because like yeah, like I think all three of us can agree that we've got way farther and way quicker than we thought. But like the way we started out was so funny. Like we were just like in a group chat, like just the way we were trying to figure out a team, like a business name was so stupid. And we
Dude,
were all
I
we didn't
still have
really
a
like
document.
plan it to be so legit, you know. We were just like, oh,
Yeah.
let's like kind of do our own thing and see how it goes.
Yeah, I still have the notes in my phone of just like I was just thinking of words that sounded cool.
Yeah,
Just
pretty
write them
much.
down.
Like literally, dude.
Yeah.
I remember this chain of texts where it was just like we were trying to figure out the word for the T, and it
Yeah.
was just
Just
us
'cause we figured
spamming
out
T words.
That we
Tenacity.
figured
And
out that
Yeah.
like my last name is Scaplin, Andy's last name is Pelletier. So like the S&P was like, oh, strength and performance. That's
Yeah.
sick. What's a T word? So we're just throwing out T words.
should have been
We landed on Triumph.
The strength and
I think-
performance. That would've been funny to say.
I think when we threw out Triumph, we were all just like, that's good enough for now. We'll just leave it at that and then focus on some other stuff and change it if we want to.
Yeah.
And then we just
Now it's the thing. Now people are like Team Triumph.
Dude, it's very cool. It's like I can't remember if I already said this on an episode, but like we'll go with Instagram Explore page and there will be some random motherfucker wearing a TSP shirt. It's actually really
That's
cool.
sick. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I'm telling you, man, if
Kevin's
you
got it down, dude.
meeting people that you don't follow back is like such an honor. It's an insane feeling. Last thing, I think it just kind of emphasizes the fact that like a lot of these very successful businesses and companies aren't premeditated. Like nobody really is going into like I feel like if you're going into making a business planned like with everything planned out and you have like this massive plan and you're gonna do this at this point and you're gonna hit these Q1 Q2 profit margins and whatever that's not how you kind of want to go about things. You go about things with three dudes that you shower with and you make a group chat where you go let's name this Triumph and Scaplin Pelletier. That'd be pretty cool.
It's about how it went.
I mean that's how I did it.
That's
I was just
pretty
like,
accurate.
hey, I want to get stronger. Let me be a nerd about how I can get stronger. And then someone goes, you want to coach me? And I go, okay, I guess.
Alex Tran PL.
And then it's just Alex Tran PL, man. This game has gotten so much traction for no reason. And it was just, it was a freshman. I had no friends. I was texting one of my boys back in high school. He was like, you should make a powerlifting account. And I go, what should I name it? And I was like, Alex Tran lifts. And I'm like, I don't want to think about this. Whatever. Alex Tran powerlifting PL. All right, screw it. And I made it like that and I never changed it. And now it's just like people will call me Alex Tran PL and people won't even call me by my name. It's cool. You guys got probably the same thing. TSP. People are like, oh my god, TSP.
Dude, no one calls us by our full names.
Yo, TSP Andy.
TSP Andy, what's up?
TSP Devin.
If you're a power lifter on Instagram, you don't even know anyone's name. You just know everyone by their
definitely,
Instagram name.
For sure.
Dude, Chunky Monkey, I just found out his last name.
It took me a decent while too.
I had to go on Lifting Cast and look at regionals and see. I was like, oh, that's his last name. But I was
What's
like,
his last name?
I forgot.
It's Stanio. I don't know if it's pronounced Stanio or not, but
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I was like, it's just Chunky Monkey, man. Shout out Tyler.
Shout out Chunky Monkey.
All right, we wanna close this so Chris can go to the gym.
Chris, do
I
that.
do need to train, yeah. Yeah, we'll close it out. Alex, where can people find you and your information that you put out?
Alex Tran PL, baby. Instagram. I'm on YouTube now, I guess. I have one video, probably got another one coming out soon. But Alex Tran PL and everything. Email, PayPal, Instagram, YouTube.
Alex, in 2 years, when you've got
PayPal.
50 videos on your channel, you're gonna listen back to this podcast, hearing yourself say, "I got one video on my channel."
Yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna laugh and I'll be like, dude, I'm in the same place.
Ah.
All right. Thank you everyone for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Triumph SCP, rate us on Spotify. That's it. All right. Bye-bye.